Here we go.
Oh. Hey, we're live, by the way.
We're live. Yes, thanks, John. So glad we have you here to keep us all in line, John. I don't know what else we would do. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic virtual tasting with Becker Vineyards. I'm Rebecca Nelson, Wine Club Director here out at the winery. Tonight, we have a very special treat for everybody. We actually had the Becker family all tell us what their favorite current vintages that we have right now are, and they came back with some great choices. We have the 2017 Viognier Reserve, the 2018 Roussanne Reserve, and the 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve from the Canada Family Vineyards. So 3 fantastic wines to go through tonight. We also are very excited because not only do we have Dr. Richard and Dr. Joe Becker, we also have Will Becker joining us all the way from the East Coast. And of course, with you as always, is our winemaker, John Leahy, to keep everybody in line. So I'm going to turn it over to the guys. I hope everyone enjoys a fabulous evening. Cheers.
Cheers, Rebecca. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome to week 27. You know, 6 months and counting. And I still haven't been fired. I tell you what, COVID has been a strange year. So,
the mail service is off.
Exactly. Well, Doc, Joe, would you care to carry us into this evening?
Yes, now we're in 6 months of, this is our version of what all the New Yorkers did, going out on their fire escapes and trying to distract one another from the horrors of all this very aggressive disease. And it's not going away. We need to continue practicing the separation and cleanliness, and especially the use of the mask. That will save so many lives and make this go away. But it's been a wonderful experience for me to be part of this, and I love the company tonight especially. And so anyway, welcome.
Well, I will second the use of the mask. And get on to this. So I noticed that you haven't messed with the ducks behind you, so I thank you. I don't feel like you're gaslighting me. So Will, it's been a few months. Thanks for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and the tie and the jacket, that's very, very nice. You didn't have to dress up for us though, buddy.
I rolled from this meeting into a few more meetings, so but I was happy to do it. Happy to try and look respectable.
So I really don't know this question. Who picked which wine as your favorites? What did you pick as your favorite wine?
I picked the Viognier.
I picked the Roussanne.
And so I guess that means Will picked the Cabernet. So
I did. I love the cabs that you're making.
Fantastic. Well, I think we should kick off with the Viognier if everybody's in agreement. And I'm going to step back because this is the family favorite. So I'm going to reserve myself for smart alecky comments. But so Doc, if you'd like to lead off with the Viognier.
This grape is a wonderful grape, and it was my wife Bunny's favorite wine that we made. Although she loved a bunch of the others, I'll tell you. But there's something about the similarities between the Texas Hill Country and the top of the Rhone Valley near Vienne. And Vienne is probably the city for which Viognier is named. It also means in Latin, road of the valley of hell. And that probably applies to both areas as well. But it was probably brought by the Emperor Dalmatia Emperor Probius from Dalmatia in 281 and planted in Condrieu, which is very near Vienne. And Viognier is the only grape that's permitted to be grown in Condrieu. So if you get a glass or a bottle of Condrieu white wine, it's got to be Viognier. But there's just something about the complexity in this wine and the complex aromatics. It's a grape that in floral texture matches Riesling and Muscat. Many grapes have a lot of nice aromatics, but those three, Viognier, Riesling, and Muscat, are just striking. When you drive through a vineyard where those grapes are ripening, it's a different experience than driving past Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon and so forth. And it's a grape that's a cousin of Nebbiolo by DNA testing, a cross between Nebbiolo and probably a native grape at some point. But when we planted this, and based partly on tasting it and partly on the similarities, the geographic similarities, people, one of our advisors said, don't plant that. Nobody can pronounce it. Nobody can spell it. Nobody knows what it is. But our part of Texas has the same character that much of that part of the Rhone Valley. A lot of fruit trees are grown. The temperatures are very similar, and it's been a great I think course for us. I think it's probably the white grape of Texas, maybe the most successful. Lots of wonderful Viogniers now are made in Texas by other growers and wineries.
I think it's worth mentioning we've shared this on other of our virtual tastings, but that was it 2015 that 3 Texas wines entered 3 Viogniers in a wine competition in Lyon. Thank you, and won gold, silver, bronze.
Right.
We were silver, but the 3 Texas Viogniers won out over their French counterparts.
They won the top 3 positions. All the other French Condrieu Viogniers were below us. Blind tastings, all French judges. It was kind of our version of the Paris tasting, the Lyon tasting.
Yeah, and I think we actually have to ask if next year when we go to do our Bordeaux trip, I think we need special permission to get back into the country, don't we?
Probably.
So Will,
The aromatics.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you your take on the Viognier.
So what I love about Viognier, the aromatics, and you're the way that we are able, you really, to manage the thyme and oak and the aromatics and to maintain sort of the tropical fruit notes with the oak, I think is just beautiful. And that this has those tropical fruit notes along with a little bit of vanilla from the oak. I think it's just beautiful. I'm hoping Dad will tell the story about when Robert Mondavi bought a bottle of this at an auction. I love this story. Do you remember?
I do remember.
Dad? So Robert Mondavi.
Yeah. It was a powerful experience for us, but so it was 1997, I think, and so it was the first year that we produced Viognier, and we were pouring at the wine event in food and wine event in at the Four Seasons in Austin, and Robert Mondavi was the invited guest, and we were in a room with probably 20 restaurants and tables and 20 wineries, and we were the newest, the smallest, in the most remote corner. And I saw him enter, I saw him walk straight over to us, and he held out his glass, and he said, with that wonderful smile he had, "I want to taste your wine." And I said, "Well, just hold your glass very still, Mr. Mondavi, and I'll pour some in." And so he started tasting it, and he was a brilliant person. And I realized he questioned me for 45 minutes, and the crowd was around listening. And I realized halfway through that he thought there was a chance we hadn't made this wine. We've got it somewhere else. And maybe he didn't think he could make wine this good in Texas. And at the end, the last thing he said to me was, "You made this wine?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Keep it up." And then he stayed, and a double magnum was given for auction for KLRU, and he bought that bottle, that double magnum, and there was a picture in the Austin American States for the next day of Robert Mondavi holding our bottle of wine, and that was one of the nicest things that happened to us. And then he invited us to come to lunch at his winery, and which we did. And at lunch, he said, I want to make anyone here available to you. If you want my viticulturist, if you want my enologist, if you want our marketing people, anybody you want, I'm going to call them. You tell me who you want to talk to. Just a wonderful, gracious person. And some of the guys from Republic told me that almost a year or two before he died, in his office, I didn't go into his office, but on his office, beside his desk, was that magnum of our Viognier, but it was there for a long time after he bought it. So the very, very moving stories for us.
That is one of
It's
my
just
favorite
wonderful.
stories. Absolutely. Yeah. That's wonderful. You know who you should have talked to? You should have asked to talk to Margaret. She's a hoot.
She was at lunch, and his stepdaughter Annie cooked it. So
Yeah.
we sat with Margaret. So it was fun.
That's awesome. You know, Joe, what's your take on Viognier? You've had every vintage that the winery's produced. So what do you see as far as Texas Viognier, an overview? I'm putting you on the spot, by the way.
No. And Will has too. But I would say that what has always stood out to me is I feel like when you taste our Viognier, and this may sound a little cliche, but I feel like you get a little bit of the hill country peach on the nose when you taste it.
Yeah.
But I just think I think it's just been such an incredible wine that we've made through the years. We said it in a virtual tasting last week, that the other cliche is that it's the red wine drinker's white wine, but I think it's just a lovely full-bodied wine, and we are able to harvest it. We're able to age it, and it has a wonderful growing season here in Texas. It has some wonderful growers, which I'm sure we can talk about in a little bit. It's amazing how I would call it our little experiment. We were the first to plant Viognier, has taken off in Texas.
You know, I just saw a comment about the Viognier from a particular individual, and I don't want to call this gentleman a liar, but he says he still can't spell it, and for some reason he got 2 Pulitzers or something, didn't he, or 4, or I don't know, I can't remember. And I think
Ask him what year he graduated from A&M.
Thanks. I have somebody from A&M living next door. I'm not asking that.
So anyway, we could. I think we should get this person onto the virtual tasting right now and see how much we can embarrass Dad.
Oh, now that would be fun. So is it Robert's birthday? Is that what you were saying earlier, Doc?
Happy
My
birthday,
brother
Unc.
Robert,
Yeah.
I know you're only 75 once, and I think that's, and the fact that he looks it is not all that bad,
Wow.
You were born when your parents came home from the First World War.
Yeah. Oh, no. Look behind you. I hope that was graduation.
Right, John. Thank you. That's right.
One of my classmates.
You know, I have to say one of my favorite things is the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster. When you open it and you look under for terms, or the encyclopedia for that matter, the terms for sibling rivalry, you see a picture of Doc and Robert. It's kind of funny. Well, we should lift our glasses either way, because there are actually 2 birthdays in house tonight. So one to Robert, and your friend Trish is also celebrating a milestone. So
Happy birthday.
Wow,
Yeah.
Trish,
Happy birthday.
happy birthday. Robert,
Happy birthday, Robert.
Oh, and
I have to say, especially happy birthday to Robert, because when I was in college and I was always in Chicago on my birthday, and Uncle Robert always took me out to the most wonderful places for a birthday lunch or a birthday dinner. So happy birthday to Robert.
that's awesome. Will, do you want to give your uncle any grief, or are you going to be professional and keep us all in line?
I know he played golf today, and his goal was to shoot his age. So I hope he did turn 75. Give himself some wiggle room, and I hope it was a really nice day. I hope he had a great, wonderful day. So we look forward to catching up with him tomorrow.
He's shooting his age for 9.
Shooting his age.
Oh, yeah, I meant for 9. For 9.
One of my favorite lines is like if we're somewhere and it's time to have a glass of wine. That's when Uncle Robert says, "Brother, don't you have any good wine to pour, or what are you doing right now?"
So I hope, Uncle Robert, you have some good wine to pour.
There you go.
Well, I
Aunt,
would
like
like to say-
Karen likes the Dolcetto, so open that for her.
Oh, yeah, right. So just to get back and just so that we can give everybody the correct information, I'm going to pull up the notes on the Viognier. So to your point earlier, Joe, about the growers. So this is Jet, Bingham, and Farmhouse. So the Bingham family, Jet Wilmoth, and then Nick and Anthony and their families over at Farmhouse. So and then there is a little bit of Canada Chardonnay in here. There's just a drop or two, as we like to say.
Will you talk about why you add Chardonnay and what that brings to the body and to the aromatics?
Well, I would, but you know, I keep worrying I'm going to give away all my trade secrets, and then other people here in Texas are going to start making good wine. So, and that's
So
going to
it's spilled in by accident.
yeah,
Okay.
totally. The reason that we added the Chardonnay, honestly, so Chardonnay is, you know, Viognier is rather viscous. Okay, it is almost. I hate to use the term oily because it's not oily, but it has a very the viscosity is very heavy naturally. Chardonnay can be very heavy on the palate as well if you batonnage or mix the lees up during aging, which we did to both the Viognier and the Chardonnay. We found that by adding just a small amount, a percent or two of Chardonnay in the blend, it actually enhanced the aromatics without destroying the palate. And that's it also doesn't overpower. You want that Viognier to taste like Viognier. You don't want it mistaken for any other wine. And so blending can either enhance or detract. And so it's a fine line sometimes. But that Chardonnay, that Canada Chardonnay really acted as a boost for the aromatics while keeping that palate with that equal weight. That's why we chose that.
John,
That's the follow-up question.
Malolactic 100%?
Malactic. Well, the Chardonnay went through malactic. There was, let me look over here. Malactic is actually unfermented, according to the notes here, the final thing. So there was very little malactic acid in the Viognier from 2017. You know, especially if you have less than a gram or a gram and a quarter, it's not generally going to be easy to go through malactic, especially with a lower pH. So.
We have generally done malolactic on our Viogniers, and I guess
we do when they have enough. Absolutely. Now,
there. But I've always thought one of the differences between our Viognier, similar to Condrieu and different from California. The California Viogniers, for some reason, they avoid malolactic, and ours has always been more French in the sense of malolactic. And I wonder what do you think about that?
Well, I think some people, when they start to make Viognier, mistake it for Chardonnay. I think that's probably the biggest or the most common mistake made when you're making Viognier. You'll treat it like Chardonnay. You'll put it in all new French oak. You'll stir it up. You'll let it go through both primary and malactic, and then keep it in that French oak for a short period of time, and then take it out when it's very oaky tasting. Now I'm about to tell you what I do to the Viognier. So I take it, I put it all in new French oak, I stir it up, but then we keep it in that French oak for a couple of years. And here's the primary difference: is not taking it out too early. You take it out at the wrong peak, and you're going to have all the toasted notes without any of the fruit. That fruit's going to be in the background. If you leave it long enough, you get beyond that toasted peak, that fruit comes back, the terpenes cleave open, you get the florals, everything's there, it's perfect. It's like a little bit of magic. And there's a 6-month window where you're like, we should take it out before we lose all the florals because it's too oaky. And then after that, you get through that. And I have just given you the gist of the argument that I may have with a particular individual almost every year about oak age and the vintages. But in this particular vintage stock, the stainless steel portion of the wine did go through malactic fermentation. We were able to get the stainless steel to go through, and that was the Jet Wilmoth portion. The Farmhouse and Bingham did not have a whole lot of mala, and they were in barrel. And usually it's the exact opposite. It's usually the barrel, the brand new barrel, that goes through malic without any problem. But so that for all intents and purposes, we still have a fair amount of mallow left in there. But it's that acid, that backbone, that apple, and that peach that you reference that's coming from the mallow.
Yeah.
So John, we talked about sneaking Chardonnay into the Viognier sort of for various reasons. Have you ever used Viognier in other wines to enhance their aromatics?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you ever used it in a red wine?
Yes, we do use it in some of the red wines. It acts like, if you will pardon this horrible analogy, but it acts a little bit like MSG. It enhances the flavor. And
That is not good. John.
sorry, not good. Buddy, think of all the Thai food that you're missing out on. No.
You take the winemaker out of Napa.
So John's adding MSG to the wine. When did that start happening?
That's exactly what's gonna.
That going.
Someone's gonna hear that in the back. They're like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, well, you're. So,
It's just the umami flavor. It's good.
Yeah, this reminds me of, I used to refer to our winery as Chateau Frozen Concentrate because we did everything so, so naturally. And, but then Joe and Will picked it up and began saying it. And I said, we now have competitors and they're going to spread that rumor far and wide that we buy frozen concentrate and make wine. And maybe MSG.
There is no MSG in the wine. The fact that I have to
Can't ever
explain-
sleep.
Yeah. No, so the analogy is basically, Will, for a red wine, the Viognier does two things. Primarily, it fixes color and it fixes aromatics. And by fixing color, it stabilizes the color. That's why a lot of Syrah and Grenache blends have a little bit of Viognier in there. They're notorious, Grenache especially is notorious for dropping color after fermentation. It comes out of this brilliant, beautiful, translucent ruby or garnet, and then suddenly it starts lightening up, like Pinot Noir does the same thing. So it was an early on method of fixing color before we understood tannin management, and it was the tannin or lack therein that the color management is related to. So Viognier is a good way to help fix that. It has a lot of free tannin in there. It binds up to those oxygen free radicals and helps bind those up so that the tannins that fix the color are not worried about the oxygen. It allows it to fix the phenolics, onto the phenolics.
I found that the MSG always binds me up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks. And moving on. So we've got, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep track of any comments or questions over here rolling on. Somebody, okay, Gary, I'll keep doing the voodoo that we do. Anyway, moving on to Roussanne. Who chose the Roussanne? Joe?
I'm guilty as charged.
Okay, why? But why did you choose the Roussanne? Of all the wines, why the Roussanne?
Sure. So I had a couple ideas when I picked the Roussanne. One is I thought it would be cool that we, as I referred to earlier, our little experiment in Viognier. And that a Rhone white has done so well in Texas, and that we have some wonderful Roussanne growers. Roussanne is another, one of the principal white wines of the Rhone Valley, and that it's an interesting, but that the Viognier has done so well, and now we have another, I think, white Rhone that's doing incredibly well in Texas. We have planted some Marsanne. We have some Marsanne growers, but I think that it's amazing to me that little experiment, starting with the Viognier, has really proven that the Rhones do so well in Texas. And I love this Roussanne. Roussanne is traditionally likes a long growing season. It is predisposed to a lot of mildew and rot, but it's done so well in Texas. And this particular Roussanne, we say all the time, I feel like this has this incredible honeycomb on the palate, honeycomb flavor, and this amazing white flower note on the aroma. And I just thought it would be a great compliment to the Viognier. And I love these Rhone whites, and I just think it's done so well in Texas.
Well, I agree with you. And I think more people have discovered Roussanne. It's funny to me is that after leaving the West Coast, Roussanne was a little known white grape. I mean, you saw it here and there. and there were certainly the advocates for it, but it seems to have taken off in a broader appeal here in Texas as far as the general marketplace than it did in California for a long time. And I love Roussanne. As a single varietal, I absolutely love it. As a white wine, it's brilliant. It's heavier than the Viognier. It's actually heavier than Chardonnay to me on the palate. It's a little heavier weight. So to me, it's a white wine. When somebody asks for a non-traditional pairing, like, can you pair white wine with a traditionally paired red food? And I'm like, let's try Roussanne immediately. Viognier does work half the time. Roussanne will work 3/4 of the time. So,
and I also think this is another great Rhone from the farmhouse vineyards. Yep. This is Nick Seaton and Anthony Ferguson, who grow some incredible Rhones. They do the Counoise and the Carignan, and their vineyard and the Viognier, and their vineyard loves these Rhones.
They even have Durif for Petite Syrah, I've heard, but apparently their business manager wouldn't allow me to buy it. So,
John, have you entered this in the Dr. Pepper competition in Waco?
Yes, Doc, we did. And
John, that's really why I picked it. Was for the Dr. Pepper competition. I'm sorry, I should have said that.
How did it do?
It came in second. It came in second to the sugar-free, zero-calorie Dr. Pepper. Do not talk to me, Dr. Pepper, now that it's not made in Dublin, Texas. I'm just saying. Just don't. We're not even mentioning.
How is this? How do you handle this differently than Viognier? The two Rhone whites, but how is the making of this wine different from the Viognier?
Well, first of all, I actually don't tell Dr. Becker, Dr. Richard Becker, that I've put it in New French oak, unlike the Viognier where I tell him I do. Secondly, actually, most of this is fermented in stainless steel. We're only so a vast majority of stainless steel in the Roussanne. Then it goes to barrel to age, where the Viognier, a fair portion of it is actually fermented and aged both in barrel. They both have barrel and stainless steel aging portions, but most of this is fermented in stainless before going to barrel.
And very little malolacticalness.
It went through 100% mallow.
It did.
Oh, it did.
Yep. This is 100% malolactic. So mallow fermentation, to me, it's a tool, much like a cold soak, or whether you decide to heat the fermentation or keep it cold, length of fermentation, pressing cycle. All of those are tools on how to enhance and or repair a problem, or enhance the attribute, the natural attribute, or just to keep things the same. You love the way it's smelling and tasting now, and I want to keep it the same. So this is what we're going to do. Viognier and Roussanne, for as brilliant as they are, they're actually fairly forgiving for a white wine. Most white wines are not as forgiving when you're making them. Viognier and Roussanne, they're not quite the prima donna that Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc are, as far as not taking to your mistakes very well. So Roussanne can take a little more heat, accidental heat in the fermentation. If it gets to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, it doesn't blow all of those beautiful florals off. But Chardonnay, if you get it above 65 or a little above, then you start losing those florals. So back to Will's question, the primary difference here, Will, is that we're very animate about stirring the lees up in the Roussanne before going to barrel. So when we go to barrel, all the barrels have an equal portion of lees from the tank, and we let it sit on its lees for its 18 to 24 months. We do not rack it. We top it, we leave it alone. It doesn't get racked. The Viognier will actually get racked after it's about a year old and start the clarification process early. But the Roussanne does so much, there's so much work the Roussanne does. Roussanne and Marsanne both white Rhones, need a long time to age out and get those the palate weight and the florals need to be captured, that you need to leave it alone and leave the protection of the lees on the wine.
John, I tasted the 19 Roussanne in barrel last weekend, and well, it is really, really wonderful. Have you tasted what? It's even brighter than this. That's hard to imagine. What do you think?
It's not hard to imagine when somebody's whispering in your ear every weekend, don't forget their sigillate.
Tough crowd.
Yeah, tough crowd.
Much
Exactly.
off, John.
Exactly. Well, first of all, we did, we actually took more time with the 19 to make sure that our pH is maintained. We were much more vigilant on making sure that we hit a target on our titratable acid and our pH. The 18, we were vigilant about it, but there was a little, okay, this is good enough. We don't need to be super super vigilant. It tastes great. It'll age out well. With the 19, we were much more aggressive on the front end of the acid, making sure that if any lot came in and it was acid deficient, that we added acid to it prior to fermentation.
So John, what would be the pH difference between the two, do you think?
It's 1/10% difference. There's the 18 is at about 3.7, the 19 is about 3.6. So maybe 3.55. It depends on the lot that you tasted, but they're all pretty similar as far as the 19 pHs go. So Joe, what is it about Roussanne, and Will and Doc, you're going to answer this question too. What is it specifically about Roussanne that you find appealing when you're drinking it?
John, I think a few things. I think that I know I've had this conversation with Will a few times, but just I think that you're very gifted. You're a wonderful winemaker, and I think you're very gifted with these delicate white wines. And I feel like this is just such an extraordinary, delicate white wine. I have to say, I love, as I said earlier, I love the white flower. I love how it does in Texas. I think that we have incredible growers. We made, I don't know that we're really making anymore, but we made the Prairie Roti, which was the kind of the twin sister of the Côte Roti, or the Prairie Roti, which was a Roussanne Marsanne blend. And I think that you can still find that in some grocery stores, but I just think that's an incredible white Rhone blend, and it's just,
Yeah, the Prairie Cuvée.
I really wanted people to see how well these white Rhones do in Texas.
Well, I agree. They do very well. We're very, very fortunate for that. So, Will, what are some of the appeals to you about drinking Roussanne from this Roussanne?
I have about 7 good one-liners, so I'm going to hold them in, and I'm going to answer honestly. So, I love to cook, and I like to cook a lot of different things, and I think this is a really versatile wine. I think you could serve this with a pasta dish with a white wine sauce, with a light sauce. You could serve this, like you said, with traditional red wine foods, or I could serve this with a nice piece of fish. And I really love that this wine, I could serve this wine with almost every course of a meal that I was, serving to friends. And I think they would enjoy the different courses, and they would enjoy different nuances of this wine. But I think it's really versatile. And I think Joe is right. It's a lovely wine, but it's also, for me, it's a great wine to serve with dinner with friends, because it's so
right
versatile.
on. I have to agree with you. The Roussanne is a great wine to have with cassoulet. It absolutely does very well. So Doc,
John, yeah.
Sorry?
Raw oysters.
Raw oysters?
Yeah.
I would prefer the Viognier with oysters.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Will a question, just thinking about these white Rhones. Will and I planted and harvested our very first vintages of Viognier, and I wanted to know if Will had any harvest memories that stand out to him, just out of curiosity.
I remember the first harvest most clearly. And I just remember, you and I have been putting in glycol lines all day just so that the tanks could chill. Joe and I are crawling around on ladders, smelling that wonderful glue, and streaming together the glycol lines to the tanks so that when we harvested, we could keep those, whites fermenting below 65. And I remember not getting into bed until like I don't know, till midnight, and knowing we were going to get up at like 4:30, 4 o'clock, and eating the breakfast and start picking before the sun came up, and but just being so excited about it that I didn't mind that we weren't getting any sleep, but just that first harvest was so exciting. We were out there with buckets and snippers. We were doing it by hand. I reached in and like cut this finger down to the bone, and I remember just wrapping it up and keeping on picking. And we picked until 11. It started to get too hot to pick, and it was just wonderful. And it was exciting to pick those first grapes, and then months later try those first wines, but to try them along the way, and I think that experience was really wonderful, and I'll never forget that. So
Thanks. I always wanted to ask you.
mhm. I remember you and me and mom and dad sleeping in the cabin, on feather mattresses, on the antique feather mattresses and antique beds, and everyone's feet hanging off the end, and getting up before first light to go and pick grapes. It was exhausting and wonderful, and there's a reason at the end of harvest that everybody's a little bit prickly and needs to get the heck out of Dodge. So
why am I now having John Denver's grandma's feather bed going on in the back of my mind? Well, this is a very apropos, those harvest memories, because tomorrow officially is the last day of harvest for us. We're pressing our last 2 tanks out. So
congratulations.
yes. And but nobody at the winery is prickly at all. We're just downright neat. No, I'm kidding. It's been a nice long slope down. So Joe, you asked your brother, but what are your memories of harvest?
No, Will's absolutely right. That very first night, I remember that we were all staying the very first night before harvest. We were all staying in our back cabin on the property, and John, you'll have to help me with the name, but there was that. But anyways, let me back up for a second. There was, I think, my cousin Andrew was there. I was there. Will was there. Penny Adams was there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, mom and dad, and then Penny Adams was there with her 2 little boys, and Dean and Adam. And I remember unfortunately, one of them was sick. But I remember that. I remember being outside on the patio with Will and Dad and maybe Andrew and maybe Mom, but looking up and seeing that amazing meteor shower. And it was at the Leonid, yeah. And as Will said, I remember waking up at God bless 4 or 4:30 in the morning, and I was adolescent / teenager, and but still being kind of excited about waking up to do that, and picking everything by hand, and being and then at one point being the person that was holding a clipboard and trying to account for people had a number that you were assigned to, and whenever you got a full bucket of grapes, you shouted your number, 31, 20, 40, whatever, and we were paying people by the bucket, and I remember I was taking notes of that for a while, and then I remember the whole day of you finish harvest, you process, and then there's another 7 or 8 hours of setting up for tomorrow. Exactly right.
Right. Well,
This is I want to get back to this technique.
yeah. Okay. What?
You and Brett.
John's resume is already up.
And Rebecca, and
we charge a little more by the bucket. And I want that feather mattress up on a mattress holder, buddy.
I have so I can tell you that speaking of those feather mattresses, they're held up by ropes. And I remember one particular harvest, I was out there with the catcher on my baseball team and my cousin Andrew, and we'd had a long day. I think we'd gotten up at 4 and went to bed at probably 11:30, and at 2 in the morning the ropes snapped on this antique bed, and cousin Andrew's mattress just went in the middle of the night.
Andrew, I'm sorry.
And, anyways, but that made me think of that.
That's funny. Well, it's great because, wineries are a family affair. It doesn't matter whether, the family is 10 members or 200, it's still a family affair, straight across the board. So on to the Cabernet.
Here we go. Yeah. Should I tell you why I picked it?
Absolutely. We want to know why.
So I was in college, my junior year. My dad called up and said, bring some guys home. We're planting a vineyard. Out of the blue. This was, he'd collected wine. He had a wine collection. We had this property out in Fredericksburg. Well, and, but the whole plant a vineyard thing hadn't made its way up to Massachusetts where I was going to college. And said, he called up and said, do you think you could get some guys to come home and plant a vineyard? And I'm like, where? And he goes, on our place in Fredericksburg. And so it all seemed a little strange. And if you don't know my father, he has always had hobbies that were big. We kept bees. We had the big boxes in the backyard. And we didn't live in the country. We lived in suburban San Antonio. We lived across the street from the hospital, from the medical school. Like we were not on a farm. He took our whole backyard, plowed it under, and planted a, half-acre garden. Everyone else in the backyard had swing sets, and we had corn.
Because why not?
Because why not?
You're on a farm there, buddy.
And I don't know if we were zoned for it, but one summer he brought home a calf, and we raised 2 calves in the backyard with our neighbors. And so, I wasn't totally thrown when he called up and said, bring some guys home, we're planting a vineyard, but I wasn't entirely sure he didn't mean in our backyard in San Antonio. So anyway, I got, and most of these hobbies worked out well. He was a fabulous gardener, which is translated well into growing grapes, but we always grew all of our own vegetables, which is pretty amazing. And I remember harvesting honey from our beehives, and it was fabulous. And the cow was delicious. But this just seemed like a real reach. And so I just never really knew. And this was not like the biggest investment so far. I've been buying a calf. Like this was a bigger investment into a hobby, which was, more than a hobby. It was going to be a commitment. And I just didn't know if we could do it. And the first couple of vintages weren't bad, but they were out of balance. We bought all new Navarre French oak, and we put the reds in there for 2 years and let them sit. And I think we over oaked the Chardonnay a little bit, and there were components there that weren't bad, but there were some okay wines being made around us. Grape Creek would have an interesting bottle or two in their lineup. It was a different owner, a whole different process back then, different Grape Creek. But I didn't understand. I didn't have the vision. I didn't know that this was going to work. And I remember coming home in 1997. And so the first harvest was 95. So this was, the first 2 harvests have been okay. But in 97, I came home and Dad said, I came home from college, and Dad said, try this. And he handed me a glass of red wine. And it was sort of this sort of transcendent moment where, like, oh my God, like we can really do this, and we can really do this at an incredibly high level. And the first time I really not believed, but saw that it was going to work out, it was going to happen, was in that glass of Cabernet that he handed me. And it was an amazing glass of wine. It was a world-class cab. And I just didn't know that we could do it in Texas, and I didn't know that we could do it. And so that moment for me, in that that perfect glass of cab, was that moment when I knew this wasn't a hobby. This wasn't the beehive in the backyard that was making it no fun to play in the garden. This was going to be magic and wonderful and special, and that we were going to be able to do sort of something almost transcendent. And he called the first couple of vintages the iconoclast, and that's what that glass of wine was for me. It was really a special moment to know that, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. So that's why I said, Dad, pick a cab pick a cab and let me talk about cab. And Cabernet has always been my favorite. And so I've always thought the fruit coming from them, the Cabernet coming from them, has been special. And we've had some wonderful winemakers. I think Russell Smith made some fabulous cabs. And I think in your hands, John.
I'm sorry. Russell actually did quite a few nice wines. Yeah,
he made some wonderful wines, but it's been magical in your hands. I think you have a delicate artistry to your winemaking that has been fabulous with the fruit that we've been able to get. And I've loved what you've done with all the fruit we've gotten from Canada. But the Cabernet was the first time I realized that this was going to be just a really wonderful experience and endeavor. So.
Yeah. Well, cheers to that. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Will.
Absolutely. Cheers to that. That's a memory in a glass right there. Oh. Somebody said they can see a future TV program called The Becker Bunch. I like that.
I'm not having any more kids.
Yeah, right. Or just more grapes. Well, so Will, this Cabernet, I cannot remember, when were you on last with us on these tastings? It was in the spring, wasn't it?
Oh no, I was on this summer. I was on in sort of mid-August.
Mid-August, okay. So obviously in the middle of harvest, and I've completely lost track of time. That or the early onset dementia is finally kicking in, which my wife is in the background nodding like this after saying that. So the Cabernet here is actually 96% Cab and 4% Merlot. So and this is a fun one because obviously Canada Family Vineyards, the 96% Cab, but it's 2% Merlot from Jet Wilmeth and 2% Merlot from VJ Reddy in this glass. So
it's just a beautiful glass of wine.
Well, Merlot, Cabernet loves to have a little Merlot. It always loves to have a little bit Merlot.
So do I.
And I think this 17 Canada really is like right now turning the corner. I mean, it's just got such dark, almost espresso on the nose. Yeah. It's just a rich, beautiful. It's really starting to evolve in the bottle since I've last tasted it.
Will, do you think this meets the criteria for trophy wife? Cab.
It's a trophy wine quality wife. Yes, absolutely it does. I'm trying to figure out how that was going to work that in.
Yeah, and he did. I kind of like the early days with the straw.
What's really fun is to get a glass of the 17 Canada and a glass of the 17 Newsom cabs, and just to drink those side by side and to have that with a meal, and to do we've done it a couple times with friends. We've had them over for dinner and opened both and let them try two different expressions, different parts of Texas, and two truly wonderful Cabernets. So yeah, by the way, I need more of those, please. So
yeah, absolutely. I just need a credit card and a shipping address.
Richard A. Becker. It's a black.
Well, I know a guy.
My goodness. So this Cabernet, so with the Canada, and I think, was it the 07 was the first vintage of Canada?
Yes.
Okay. So, wow. We've had a nice long run with these so far. So Joe, what do you like about the Cabernets?
Well, John, can I think what's always humorous to me, because we did, it's worth mentioning the Canadas. Brenda Canada being the retired school teacher, who's she and her father had a dream to grow grapes in Texas, and she told me that when he died, he left her some money specifically for the purpose of growing grapes in Texas. And so, John, what I think is, and as you always joke, Mrs. Canada married her vineyard manager, Dwayne. And what's always so wonderful to me is that when Dwayne and Brenda, who are just absolutely wonderful people, but when they visit the winery, Dwayne wants to make sure, John, that you're handling his grapes appropriately.
Yes, he does. Yeah, absolutely. He has a vested interest in making sure nothing goes wrong.
Can I tell one more story?
Yes, sir.
Please.
So this was probably 10 years ago. Mom and Dad and I and my wife Emma and I were the four of us were out in Napa, And our distributor had set up some wonderful tastings for us in different places, you know, around Napa, and we were having a lovely, just a beautiful couple days. And we got a phone call from the distributor saying that Gordon Getty wanted us to come and have lunch with him at Plumpjack, which is his Cabernet, his boutique winery, that, you know, red wine boutique Cabernet winery. And we were sort of intrigued, and so we went and had a very nice meal, and he brought out his winemaker, and we asked, you know, how did you know we were here, and why are we here? And he said, well, I order your wine, I drink your wine. And you know, he's got his own boutique winery, he's got Plumpjack, and it releases at, you know, $150, $200 a bottle each year. And he goes, yours is better, I like yours better, and you charge $40 a bottle, so I order yours. So I think it really speaks to the quality of Cabernet that's being made. And I think that whatever we charge for this, I think it's an unbelievably good cab, and it is a special experience. And I think it's been recognized by a lot of fun people. But he was talking to our distributor, ordering more of our cab, and they said, well, actually the Beckers are in Napa. I said, gosh, send them over. So I had a very nice, interesting lunch with Gordon Getty and at Plumpjack, and it was fun to try his wines and our wines side by side, and it was a pretty cool experience. So,
You know, it's one thing you kind of get used to when you're in the wine industry, are eccentric owners.
And eccentric winemakers, John.
No.
but God, their kids are stable. You know, it's amazing.
Right? You know, this. I'm glad you chose Cabernet, Will, because the cab was the thing that when I did the tasting before my interview with Becker back in 2012, you know, we sent wines to the house, and I did a virtual tasting where I tasted each wine, not being recorded, gave my opinion, you know, and then was asked to find counter wines from the local area that I lived in and do some comparison. But it was the Cabernet was the thing that really kicked it off for me, thinking, wow, this really can be done in Texas. This is awesome. Yeah. That was the cinch of the deal for me. Was Cabernet.
Made beautiful Cabernets in Texas. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. But we really have to thank the growers. They grow beautiful fruit. Yeah. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. So food time, guys. We've got 3 wines. We got three foods. So this is how we're going to do it. Each of you have to pick up a food that goes with the wine that you picked. And then you have to say why you picked that, because everybody's tired of listening to my smart alecky comments. So Joe, we'll start with you. Your wine and the food you would pick with it.
I actually, I have to say that this weekend I had a glass of this Roussan, and we have, you know, as we've reopened the winery, we've reopened it with a variety of food pairings, some small bites, and a charcuterie plate that you can get. Particularly on the charcuterie plate, there's a wonderful Manchego cheese, and that you can get a little bit of truffle honey, and it's just an absolutely wonderful pairing with this Roussan, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Will, we will get to you last, but I'm sorry, I keep forgetting your cab. Doc, Viognier, and
Well, one thing the nice thing here, John, is we have a little bowl of fresh Texas pecans, and they are pretty fabulous. All 3 of these wines. I mean, just there's something about a Texas pecan and Texas fruit, and that's something to think about. You know, and Viognier gets mentioned with things like Thai food would be great there, spicy food. And I think, you know, with at Thanksgiving with the turkey and dressing, this one would have made it, I think. You would stand up to the spice and the fat in the Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, it definitely would stand up to, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and, you know, we all like to chuckle because every time you mention pecan with wine, that's all you need. And I keep thinking I need a little something more than a pecan, but I have to be honest with you. When we did that pecan tasting with the Chardonnay and the Viognier, it really was amazing how it enhanced the flavor. Yeah.
They're like this. I mean, they're
Yeah,
amazing.
they are very simpatico. So, Will, fabulous meal with the fabulous Cabernet. What is it?
For me, so my wife gave me a sous vide for my birthday, and I've had a lot of fun figuring out how to do steaks with that. You know,
We can't say sous vide here, otherwise the chef's going to want one.
for me, this is just fabulous. I use a little bit of Perini rub, you know, in there with it, and then you know, sous vide it, and then throw it on the grill for a couple of minutes on both sides, and it's, you know, just a New York strip steak sous vide and then grilled with this is just wonderful. So it's a perfect meal for me.
That is a classic pairing. Absolutely. That is absolutely great. So we, next week, I guess, is coming up next week, we're going to do the winemaker, assistant winemaker, and general manager pairing. I have no idea what those wines are. Somebody hasn't told me yet what my favorite wine is. Actually, I believe the pairings are out on the website. And oh, here we go. Somebody who understands how this little text thing works. So I know I picked the 14 Chivot Noir, and then we also have the Grenache and the Ranger Haze, which will be on next week.
Those are great.
That'll be a very good pairing for that. Any final words for you guys? Any final thoughts?
Happy birthday.
No, happy birthday, Robert. I just I have to say, being the youngest child, it's totally awesome to be doing this with my dad, my older brother, and I've wanted to do that for a long time.
It's really wonderful.
That's not typical of a youngest child, Joe. You're supposed to be a little more greedy and self-centered.
I can do that. I mean,
okay, because you're putting me in a bad position. Both Jody and I are youngest children, and you know, I just
shows.
people thinking that we're that, you know, Joe, you absolutely, the three of you have a very special thing, and it is wonderful working for a family that loves what they do. So it's very easy to do. So
thank you.
Will, as always, I love it when you join us, and can hardly wait till you can travel back again.
Any last sobriquet for John? I mean, I thought the last time you exited on the trophy wife.
Yeah, and I thought that would have been the end of it.
I don't have anything. I realized I didn't have anything coming in. I felt bad.
Yeah, I feel real bad too.
So do have me back, and I will be prepared. The story I wanted to tell about Cab was the thing I had in my head, and I wanted to talk about Robert Mondavi with Viognier. Those are the two stories I wanted to tell tonight, and I got to tell those or hear those.
The Biden Trump debate come to mind, or?
I've been very pleasant today.
I actually have to duck out. I actually have a parent-teacher conference right now, so
There you go.
Okay.
I apologize. It's so great to see everybody. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much for involving me.
Will,
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. So I guess we should cheers everybody at home, and thank you again for joining us for another week of tastings. Thanks for spending your time with us, Doc, Joe, as always. It's been wonderful.
John.
So, cheers, everyone.